Welcome everybody. This is Rob with Let's Talk Board Games. This is a little different from what I normally do. I wanted to do something because I have been off the radar for quite some time now. But with the release of this big news from Fantasy Flight, I thought it was time for me to figure out how to make some time to get back onto YouTube in some sort of format. So, it's going to be a video log. And now, I know you guys know me for doing box openings, but I kind of wanted to slow it down for a second and just kind of talk board games, actually. So, let's get straight to it. The big news you guys already know about. Fantasy Flight announced that they will no longer be producing any more of Games Workshop's board games as far as their like IP and all. You can go over to Fantasy Flight's website and they'll kind of give you their gist of it. And I mean, no real reasoning behind the move, but we just know that they are no longer an item. So. There are a lot of videos coming up on YouTube now, just kind of going over, I guess, speculation of what possibly could have happened, and this is going to be my take on it. I know people seem to lean in a certain direction as far as when they favor a particular company. As far as I know, I don't know much more than anyone else right now, so, and excuse me if I sound kind of sidetracked here. I've got 2-3 things going on at the moment. But anyway, so I am not a huge fan of Games Workshop. I don't dislike Games Workshop. I do find some things rather off about some of their business practices. Now, as far as Fantasy Flight is concerned, I guess you could say I'm kind of biased there, just because I own a lot of their games. I think they're a really good company. Now, again, I'm not like in love with Fantasy Flight at all, but I think they know what they're doing. And so here is my speculation on why this breakup has occurred. I believe when Silver Tower came out, well, actually, let's back up from there. When Warhammer Fantasy, the adventure card game, came out, I think Games Workshop saw the value in that, and they immediately started to produce Silver Tower. And I think they actually released Silver Tower under Fantasy Flight's nose. Because if you look at how Fantasy Flight then in turn released their own, or maybe they're still working on it, but their own miniature war game, is kind of like a blow back at Games Workshop. At least that's how I take it. But anyway, so Games Workshop, they released Silver Tower, trying to cash in. It's obviously their IP, so I mean, you can't really blame them. But I just don't think they knew how well the adventure card game was going to do, and when they saw that it sold out and people were like, trying to find it like crazy, they were like, okay, let's pull the trigger on this. Let's release something. And it was a beautiful game. My buddies got it, and I played it once, and I enjoyed it. It was nothing for me to go hoopla over. But I mean, it was a good game. It was different, but I mean, a lot of their stuff is. I mean, they've got their whole world built up, and so when they develop games, they can make it a really rich experience. So Fantasy Flight releases adventure card game. Games Workshop releases Silver Tower, and Fantasy Flight responds with their miniature war game. And then I think that's where it's kind of like the relationship was on the rocks, you know? Um, I think that Fantasy Flight is going in a different direction now. They've got a much larger, I would say, fan base um, as far as their board games and stuff are concerned, um, versus Games Workshop and their board games, the few that they have. Um, I think what company was it? Asmodee that bought Fantasy Flight. I may be mistaken there. But now they've got a lot more revenue to play with, or should I say income? They've got a lot more money to play with, um, and so they don't really need Games Workshop. I mean, they've produced a lot. I mean, yeah, it would have been great for them to continue the adventure Warhammer Fantasy, the adventure card game, but I mean, do they really? They can take their world of Tyranoth and just put some lipstick on that pig and put it out there for us, and I think we'll eat it up just the same. I mean, there's going to obviously be some fans of that whole Warhammer IP that won't buy into it, but I mean, we buy the games and we love the games because the mechanics work, not because the pictures are pretty. That might be a reason why the game gets our attention, but I can think of a lot of games that look good. You play it and it's kind of like, nah, I'll just put this one back on the shelf. And I'm much more willing to play a game with crummy ass artwork, but that plays smooth, versus a game, versus something with great pictures and shitty mechanics. So again, Fantasy Flight, not much to lose in this breakup between them and Games Workshop. I feel like Games Workshop, I mean, they've got the IP, so they can go anywhere else. But I mean, who are they going to find out there that's going to produce the quality that Fantasy Flight does? I mean, you've got companies like Plaid Hat Games. They can't really go to like Privateer Press. I mean, that's a miniature company, first and foremost. I mean, they're trying to get into the board game world, and they can't really. I don't know. I don't see anything really coming through the pipelines that has done anything significant. So, I mean, when you think about board games, you think about Fantasy Flight first. They can't take it over to, what's it, Wizards of the Coast. They can't take it over there to them. I mean, they produce D&D. So, I mean, they're not going to. I don't think they would try to carry on a Warhammer Fantasy RPG, because that would be in direct conflict with their role playing game. So GW might be in a tough situation right now. They're going to want a company that can produce the quality that Fantasy Flight was producing and the volume, and that's going to be a big deal. I mean, there's not a lot of companies out there that are willing to sink that kind of money into an IP, even though they know it could be profitable, but it's a lot of money to produce these board games. Now, GW could always do it themselves, but as we've seen, they're not the best when it comes to producing these games. I mean, Silver Tower was good. They've got that. like that Space Patrol or whatever it is. You're Space Marines, and it's like a tile laying game. And the Tyranids are one player's a Tyranids, one player's a Space Marines. I can't even remember the name of that game, but that was really forgettable. And their Games Workshop, they keep trying to force their miniature line on you. They're trying to force the war game on you, and that's what I don't like about it. I'm like, I don't want to have to buy a board game and sit there and glue shit together and assemble everything and then finally start playing it. I mean, sometimes when I buy a board game, I mean, I take it over to my buddy's house, and this will be our first time kind of running it, and we'll opening it up, look at the rules, and we'll start going at it. And you get a situation where you're gluing models together. Now, some people love that. My friend, he actually loves it. He loves GW and stuff. So I just think from a board gamer's perspective, you are not going to want to do that with every game that you buy from a particular company, And then the price is an issue too. Games are already getting up there in price, especially with Kickstarter out here now. And that's another thing that Games Workshop will have to look out for. I mean, they're not only are they competing with the bigger companies, the bigger board game companies, if they decide to produce their own board games, but they're competing with Kickstarter. And yeah, there's people out there that will put $150 into a Kickstarter campaign to get a game produced, but you kind of know what you're getting to an extent. Well, you don't know what you're getting, but you kind of have an idea. You've got pictures. They kind of keep you up to date. And a company like GW, they do not do that. I mean, they kind of release their games with little advertising for it. So, I mean, how is that going to work in the board game world? Where it's okay, here's this game. It comes out next month. If they even give you that much warning, we're asking you to spend $150, $160, dollars. And if they even want to compete with a lot of these Kickstarter games that are coming out, they're going to have to put more in the box. And in which case, that's going to decrease the value of their miniature war games line. Because then you're like, okay, well, I'll just go pick up their board games and get, a game and a shit ton of miniatures for a fraction of the price, That's if they make it a reasonable price, because no one's going to be they're not going to be able to keep a solid revenue stream with releasing board games that are, $160 every time. And then when they do decide to release something that's inexpensive, it's not really worth it, because you can tell it was just pumped out for a quick money grab. So yeah, I think the ball is in Fantasy Flight's court on this one. I think it was actually a smart move for Fantasy Flight, if they were the ones to go ahead and decide not to renew the contract. Because they don't really have anything to lose at this point. I mean, they're losing a few games, but I mean, if you think about a lot of these games, only game that was really hot that they're losing, that they're probably not really kicking themselves for, but could be upset about, is Warhammer the Adventure, or Warhammer Fantasy the Adventure card game. And that's just because it had such a well run, being sold out that first time. I mean, it's sad for that game to go, but games come, games go. So we're running about 14 minutes in or so. I really don't have much more to say on this topic, but as far as you guys, what do you guys think about this? Who do you think decided to call it quits? Um, do you guys see GW being a power player much longer? Because I sure don't. Um, war games are War games aren't on their way out. I don't think war games are going anywhere, but they definitely don't take up the uh, the bulk of the hobbyist time anymore and money. I mean, it's definitely, when you look at Kickstarter, it's board games followed by card games, um, with war and when wherever role playing games are probably coming in third, and then war games are right behind that. So um, where's GW gonna go now? You know, what company would you like to see pick up the Warhammer IP? You know, do you think it's smart Fantasy Flight to produce their own miniatures war game? I mean, I don't think it will hurt them, honestly. I think it's kind of like, if we make money off of it, we do. If we don't, we don't. They've got the facilities the capital to make it happen. You know, they've got their own fantasy world. We may not know much about it, but maybe that's a good thing. Where Fantasy Flight is not Fantasy Flight, where GW is kind of stuck with what they have, and they can kind of cram in information here and there without disturbing too much of the story that they have in place. But yeah, I mean, Fantasy Flight, they can take this Tyrannos thing, and I mean, I know they've got the world built up, but I mean, it's a lot that people don't know. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what Fantasy Flight's going to do and where they're going to go. Sky's the limit for them. GW fans, I don't know, man. Get ready for some price hikes, because they're going to have to do something to offset this loss that they're about to receive from not having any income flowing in from Fantasy Flight. So, well, that's it. That's it for sure this time. So, you guys look for us on Facebook. Leave a comment. Anything you guys want to talk about, let me know. I'm way overdue for a box opening, but I kind of prefer doing this because I can just sit on here and ramble away, and if you guys decide to listen, you listen. If you don't, you don't. But I enjoy it regardless. So you guys have a great day, and keep gaming.